welcome to the Explainer. So today we are tackling a genuine mystery. I'm talking about something that has probably confused absolutely every single one of us at some point on our investing journey. You know the feeling, right? You log into your mutual fund dashboard, you look at the returns, you look at the money you put in, and you just feel like the math doesn't add up. It's like your portfolio is playing tricks on you. Well, you are definitely not alone in feeling that way. Today, we're going to look at the data together, play a little bit of financial detective, and completely decode the SIP return mystery. By the end of this, we're going to finally figure out what acronyms like CAGR and XIRR actually mean for your hard-earned money. Okay, let's dive right into this. I want you to picture a scenario. Imagine you are looking at two completely hypothetical mutual funds. On the left side, we have Fund A. Now, Fund A is boasting an absolutely incredible 18% compound annual growth rate, or CAGR. On the right side, we have Fund B, sitting at a respectable, but clearly lower, 15% CAGR. If I stopped you right now and asked which one you choose to invest in, human nature practically screams at you to immediately pick Fund A. I mean, 18% is greater than 15%, right? It seems like an absolute no-brainer. But here is where the story gets incredibly interesting. Imagine two different investors. They both decide to invest through a monthly systematic investment plan, an SIP. Investor 1 puts their monthly installments into Fund A, the Superstar Fund. Investor 2 puts their monthly installments into Fund B. Now, fast forward a few years. You'd think Investor 1 is swimming in cash, but actually, the investor in Fund B, the fund with the lower top-line return, actually ends up with more money in their bank account. No way, right? So we really have to stop and ask the ultimate question here. Which fund actually made more money for the SIP investor? How is it even mathematically possible that 15% beat 18%? Is mathematics suddenly broken? Did we all sleep through that one specific, crucial day in algebra class? Or, and honestly, this is the real secret here, are we just simply looking at the completely wrong number for the way we are actually investing? Most everyday investors operate on this baseline assumption that a higher CAGR automatically, always, equals more wealth, regardless of how they put their money into the market. But as we are about to see, the way you deploy your capital completely changes the math you need to use to track it. It's a total game changer. All right, let's get into our first clue, the limits of CAGR. Let's start by defining our terms, so we're all on the same page. CAGR stands for Compound Annual Growth Rate. In really simple terms, it tells us the annualized rate at which an investment would have grown from its exact starting value to its exact ending value. It assumes this perfectly smooth, uninterrupted compounded growth rate along the way. But pay close attention here, because the absolute most critical phrase in this entire definition is single, one-time lump sum investment. CAGR assumes there is only one starting line. For example, suppose you take a lump sum of 1 lakh rupees and deposit it on day 1. You just leave it there. You don't add a single rupee more. After 5 years, that investment becomes 2 lakh rupees. CAGR simply asks, what constant annual growth rate turns 1 lakh into 2 lakh over exactly 5 years? The math gives us approximately 14.87%. It works beautifully. Why? Because there are only 2 major cash flow points in this whole scenario: the exact day you put the money in and the exact day you check the final value. And this brilliantly illustrates why an SIP is a completely different beast altogether. An SIP investor doesn't just drop 1 lakh on day 1 and walk away to the beach. Money enters the fund repeatedly. You put in 5,000 rupees in January, then another 5,000 in February, another 5,000 in March. This means you do not have a single starting line. You have dozens, maybe literally hundreds of starting lines. Think of every single SIP installment as having its own personal stopwatch. Click. Your January investment has been sitting in the market, ticking away, working for you for 60 full months. But click. Your February investment has only been there for 59 months. Your March investment, 58 months. And your very last installment, it might have only been in the market for a single month. You simply cannot mathematically treat all this money as if it entered the fund on one single day. It just doesn't make sense. And that is exactly where CAGR totally fails the SIP investor. Moving on to clue number 2, the XIRR decoder ring. So if CAGR is broken for SIPs, what do we use? This is where we find XIR, which stands for Extended Internal Rate of Return. Sounds a bit like a mouthful, I know, but this is your ultimate financial decoder ring. XIR is a money-weighted measure that considers 3 absolutely vital pieces of information: exactly how much money was invested, the precise calendar date it was invested, and what the entire portfolio is worth today. Think of XIR as asking the math equation, hey, considering every single cash flow and the exact date it happened, what single annualized return makes all these chaotic, staggered investments mathematically consistent with the final current value? Let's say you start a 10,000 rupee monthly SIP. After 12 months, you've invested 1,20,000 rupees out of pocket. If your current value is 1,35,000, you can't just divide your 15,000 rupee gain by your total invested amount and call it a 12.5% annualized return. That's just a simple absolute gain. Because every single 10,000 rupee chunk was invested for a completely different length of time, you absolutely must use XIR to find your true annualized return. Looking at these concepts side by side, it really gives us a super simple rule of thumb to remember. Got a one-time lump sum investment? Use CAGR. Got multiple SIP dates where you're trickling money in? Use XIR. It's that simple. The mutual fund's reported return on its glossy fact sheet is almost always going to be a CAGR over a specific time period. That's how they market it. But your personal dashboard, the one tracking your specific deposits and your unique behavior, that should always be XIR. All right, get ready for this. The plot twist: market cycles. Let's look really closely at the actual path these two funds took over 5 years, because this completely solves our mystery of why Fund B beat Fund A for the SIP investor. Look at Fund A. It started out like an absolute rocket ship. Year 1, it's up 40%. Year 2, it's up 35%. It looks incredibly expensive and wildly successful. Everyone is probably talking about it. But notice that massive 30% drop in Year 3 for Fund A before it slowly recovers with 5% and 10% in the final years. Now, shift your focus to Fund B. It is much more steady. 8%, 12%, 18%, 20%, 17%. There are no massive dizzying peaks, but crucially, there are no massive terrifying crashes either. Now imagine your monthly SIP running through this environment. During Fund A's wildly expensive early years, your fixed monthly amount buys very few units. You are paying top dollar. But when Fund A crashes by 30%, suddenly your monthly SIP is buying a massive number of dirt cheap units. As the fund mildly recovers in years 4 and 5, that huge pile of cheap units heavily contributes to your total portfolio value. The actual path of the returns, the sequence of what happened when, completely changed your outcome compared to someone just riding the steady wave of Fund B. And this, my friends, reveals the true superpower of systematic investing. The SIP advantage is that fixed amounts essentially force you to buy fewer units when the markets are historically expensive, and it naturally pushes you to accumulate many more units when the markets crash and everything is on sale. You are mathematically benefiting from market volatility without ever having to predict or time the market. You don't need a crystal ball. Now, a quick, absolutely crucial caveat here. I am absolutely not saying that a lower CAGR always guarantees better SIP returns or that you should actively go out looking for wildly volatile funds. That is a myth. Depending on when the crash happens, like early in your journey versus right before you plan to withdraw your money for retirement, the results can drastically flip. The big takeaway is that SIPs don't magically guarantee profit, but they do provide ordinary investors like you and me a systematic, stress-free way to navigate chaotic market cycles. And by the way, this is exactly why agonizing over the perfect SIP date, debating if the first of the month is better than the 15th, is a complete waste of time. The magic is in your consistency through the cycles, not picking the right calendar day. Section 4, the Investigator's Toolkit, Evaluating Funds. So now that we know we can't just blindly trust a single return number, how do we evaluate a fund? When we look at the fine print on a mutual fund fact sheet, we usually see these 3 terms. Let's decode them, because they show us how to evaluate funds beyond just simple returns by measuring the actual risk taken. First up is alpha. Alpha simply asks how much additional bonus return the fund manager generated compared to the benchmark index, given the risk they took. Positive alpha essentially means the manager has some secret sauce and is outperforming. Next is beta, which measures sensitivity. Think of this as the whiplash metric. If the broader market drops 10%, does your fund drop 8% or 12%? A beta sitting right around 1 means it moves almost perfectly with the market. Higher than 1 means it's more volatile than the market. Lower means it's less sensitive. Finally, we have the Sharpe ratio. This metric brilliantly combines return and risk into one number. It tells you how much excess return you are getting for the specific volatility or sleepless nights you are enduring. A higher Sharpe generally points to a much better risk-adjusted performance. The lesson? Don't ever chase a fund just for its high alpha without checking if the beta shows they took wild, reckless risks with your money to get there. Now, what's really interesting about this is how we can literally visualize this risk. Standard deviation measures the dispersion, or volatility, of returns over time, and it is exactly like choosing a road to drive your car on. A fund with a low standard deviation is like a newly paved, smooth, boring highway. The returns might be steady and totally predictable. A fund with a high standard deviation, on the other hand, is a bumpy off-road dirt track. The returns are going to violently swing high and low around the historical average. Now listen closely. Neither road is inherently bad. A small cap fund is naturally going to be a bumpy dirt road compared to a massive large cap fund. That's just its nature. The investigator's job, your job, isn't to avoid all bumpy roads forever. Your job is to ask, am I personally comfortable with this level of violent swinging? And does the potential destination at the end of the road actually justify the crazy ride?
To fully round out our toolkit, here is the ultimate checklist you need to run through before you invest a single rupee. First, check the expense ratio. Do not ignore this. Even a tiny 1% difference in fees can silently compound into massive sums of wealth lost over a few decades. Second, look at rolling returns, not just point to point. Rolling returns show you how the fund actually performed across many different starting dates, proving its consistency in both bull and bear markets alike. Anyone can cherry-pick one good start date. Third, clearly understand the investment style. Is it growth, buying rapidly expanding companies? Is it value, hunting for undervalued hidden gems? Or is it momentum, just riding the current price trends? Fourth, check fund manager consistency. Remember, a fund is just a brand name. The actual humans running the daily process are what matter. Have they been there a while? And finally, align the CB Riskometer with your actual real-life financial goal. Please don't just buy yesterday's trending winner blindly. Deeply understand the underlying strategy and what it costs. And finally, we reach the verdict: behavior and real returns. I want you to literally burn this number into your memory. 6%. Why? Because this single number represents the incredibly important concept of real returns. Imagine your mutual fund app shows a fantastic 12% nominal return for the year. You are probably feeling like an absolute financial genius, right? But if inflation in the real world, the cost of groceries, fuel, housing, is running at 6%, your money's actual purchasing power only grew by the difference. That means you only got a 6% real return. We do not invest our money just to watch a digital number on an app get bigger and bigger. That's an illusion of wealth. We invest to safely transport and effectively increase our purchasing power into the future, so we can actually pay for things like retirement, our kids' education, or true financial independence. Always, always factor the invisible tax of inflation into your expectations, because it is quietly, constantly eating into those nominal returns. So while you are actively battling inflation on one front, you also have to manage your own human behavior on another. The crucial point here is this: mutual funds move in cycles. It's like a washing machine. There will inevitably be periods, sometimes agonizing periods lasting a year or two, where your chosen fund underperforms. The most common, and honestly the most disastrous mistake everyday investors make, is panicking and entirely abandoning a perfectly good strategy during a temporary bad cycle. They get scared, they sell at the absolute bottom, only to painfully watch the market cycle turn just 6 months later, and the exact strategy they just abandoned goes on a massive run of outperformance. As Amphi advises, actively managed equity schemes need reasonable, dedicated time to demonstrate their portfolio strategy. Now, patience doesn't mean blindly holding onto a fundamentally broken, terrible fund, but it absolutely means not selling your investments just because the market is making you temporarily uncomfortable. Okay, let's bring this all home and wrap up all the clues we've uncovered into a practical, usable takeaway. Here is your concrete SIP action plan. Step 1, build an emergency fund. Seriously, do not put money you might need for rent or medical bills next month into the volatile equity markets. Step 2, understand your time horizon. Equity investing is a marathon. It is for the long term. Step 3, match your asset allocation to your specific personal risk tolerance, your age, and your income stability. Use tools like the CB Riskometer to help clearly align this. And step 4, the most important of all, stay consistent. Your real investing journey isn't just determined by picking the absolute perfect fund, it's determined by the price you pay, the amount of time you remain invested, and most importantly, your rock-solid discipline when the news headlines get really scary. To help me tailor future explainers to exactly what you need, I'd absolutely love to know in the comments, what is your current investment horizon and your personal risk appetite? But more importantly, now that you know the secret of the XIRR decoder ring, are you going to go look at your portfolio differently tonight? I bet you will. Remember, don't just blindly chase a high CAGR, and definitely don't panic sell during a bumpy dirt road cycle. Let time do the heavy lifting for you. I'll see you down in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.